Happy Halloween, everyone. Sober Oni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for the spookiest servant around, Caster Liz. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. And I also have another spotlight video up today for the other new Halloween servant, Tamamo. So please be sure to check that out right after you finish this video, but for now, let's move on to Liz's stats. When it comes to HP, Liz's max HP of 11,404 puts her on the low end of the other 4-star casters, but overall is average among 4 stars. Meanwhile, Liz's attack fares much better when compared to her fellow 4-star casters. Her 8,616 attack puts her right in the middle, though she is on the low end of the rankings when compared to the attack of all 4 stars in general. Moving on to her skills. Her first skill is Innocent Monster rank X, which grants her between 6 to 12 crit stars every turn for 3 turns, depending on level, and it restores her HP between 1 to 2,000, depending on level. Her second skill is Mana Burst Pumpkin rank A, which increases Buster card effectiveness for 1 turn between 25 to 45%, depending on level, and it inflicts a burn to all enemies for 10 turns. And finally, her last skill is Performance Continuation rank A, which applies Guts 1 time for 5 turns and revives her with between 1,000 to 2,000 HP, depending on level, and also grants her 8 crit stars. Moving on to her passives, she has Territory Creation rank B, which increases Arts card effectiveness by 8%, and Item Construction rank A, which increases her debuff success rate by 10%. Taking a look at her deck and Noble Phantasm, she has a semi-arts deck. It's a quick arts buster with a buster Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Bathory Halloween Elisabeth, which deals between 300% and 500% damage to all enemies that ignores defense, depending on level, and it inflicts Curse for 3 turns between 500 and 2500, depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, her quick card has 2 hits on it, her arts card has 1 hit, and her buster has 1 hit, but her extra does have 4 hits. Her Noble Phantasm gain rate on her attack is 1.60%, and her star rate is 4%. So what this all means is she does have very few hits on her basic cards, but her Noble Phantasm gain is actually very high at 1.60%. Meanwhile, her star rate is very low at 4%. So expect that Liz is very good at charging her Noble Phantasm, but very bad at producing crit stars. Now, Liz is going to be the first free servant we're given. This means that everyone who completes the upcoming Halloween event completely will be getting a Noble Phantasm 5 Liz to show for it. No gotcha needed. That alone counts for something. But how good exactly is a free servant? Well, the quality varies from event to event, but I'm happy to say Liz is one of the better welfare servants. Right away, you should notice that she's an AoE offensive caster, and that's huge. There are a handful of AoE casters already in the game, but none of them are above 3-star, and they aren't very good. Liz bridges that gap by being the first actually good offensive caster. In large part, this is due to her skills, specifically her Mana Burst. Mana Burst is an amazing offensive skill, and considering that your Liz will be Noble Phantasm 5, that means this buff will push her damage up considerably. Additionally, it packs a burn effect for all enemies for 10 turns. That isn't too impressive, but it doesn't hurt either. And despite being a poor star generator, Liz has 2 skills that generate crit stars. Innocent Monster in particular is pretty strong, being able to grant 12 additional crit stars every turn for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown, along with a decent heal. Her status as a caster also means that she has a very low star weight, so she won't hog all the stars that her skill generates. That makes her a not so far-fetched option on a crit team, despite the lack of quick cards. And Guts is Guts, it's always good. I recommend leveling Mana Burst first, since that is key to her role as an offensive caster, followed by Innocent Monster both for the heal and the crit stars, and then finally Guts. Liz's best quality though is her Noble Phantasm. It's a very powerful AoE since it's a buster and will be at Noble Phantasm 5, and it ignores defense. The curse effect is nice too because it stacks with her Mana Burst's burn effect, and you'll be using Liz to do all your assassin farming for the foreseeable future, and for good reason. She's one of the best farmers in the game thanks to her high Noble Phantasm generation and strong Noble Phantasm. But all that aside, an extra Buster card in her deck would have been much better to further bolster that damage from a Buster Brave Chain. In addition, while she is suited for farming, she isn't a strong offensive servant overall. Yes, she's strong when compared to other casters, but casters will always be weaker than nearly any other servant from an offensive standpoint due to their class attack modifier and overall low attack stats. So don't expect her to take down a boss with 500,000 HP anytime soon. Finally, her lack of support skills outside of generating some crit stars seriously limits her team potential, and that's her biggest drawback. She really only works best in one role when compared to the other casters who fill a variety of roles and can fit in nearly any team. Speaking of team comp, like I said, it's hard to really pair Liz with anyone effectively. She isn't as team friendly as her Lancer counterpart. Ideally, you'll be using her to farm, so sticking her with other AoE casters like Giles and Coup Caster and Mephistopheles does help. In addition, Waver and Hans and Shakespeare provide good support if you want to use Liz as the main attacker against maybe a high HP assassin enemy. She also works well with offensive servants who have high star absorb, so servants like Gil, Emiya, Orion, Drake, Ushi, since she can provide them all with a decent amount of stars from Innocent Monster. For craft essences, her Bond craft essence, Pumpkin Holy Grail, increases the debuff resist of all allies on the field by 30%. And I have no idea why she has this Bond craft essence. It's one of the worst, especially when you consider that there's no shortage of servants with debuff cleansing Noble Phantasms and skills. Instead, I just recommend using craft essences that bolster her offensive capability. Limited Zero and Heaven's Feel, as well as their lower rarity counterparts, work best on her just to increase her Noble Phantasm damage. Her Noble Phantasm gain is good enough to where she doesn't really need Noble Phantasm gain craft essences, but if you really want to spam her Noble Phantasm, then go with Divine Banquet or Prisma Cosmos. And finally, if you're going to use her to farm, which is going to be the main purpose that she's fulfilling, then stick her with Kaleidoscope and its lower rarity versions, or Halloween Princess. Overall, Caster Liz is a very solid servant. She's fantastic for farming, she has some good skills, and adds an offensive presence to the caster class that just wasn't there before. You'll also get a lot of mileage out of her, since I guarantee she'll be your go-to caster when it comes to farming or fighting assassins for the foreseeable future. And she even has limited use in crit teams thanks to Innocent Monster if you really want to stretch that viability out for her. All this from a free servant is a great deal, but she does suffer from lack of synergy with other servants, and being an offensive caster with no direct support skills means she can't play the role of support, nor can she play the role of the one being supported because she has low attack overall. Her usage is very narrowly limited to farming and maybe taking out a boss provided she has some decent support, though Berserkers just fill that role way better anyway. All that considered though, she does get a B from me. She has fantastic upsides and will really impact the caster class as a whole. Her mileage is fantastic. People still use her to this day in JP, but she also has some very tangible downsides. At the end of the day though, she's free and she's a great farmer, so use her. You're not going to regret it. And those are my thoughts on Liz. I'm curious to know what you all think about our first ever welfare servant, so let me know in the comments. And please check out the Tamamo Spotlight, also up on the channel today, link in the description. And don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. And I'll see you guys in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.